everyone, and welcome to my talk today at IMF20, Inbound Marketing France. I'm Katie Robbert, CEO of Trust Insights, and today I'm going to be talking about 5 practical applications of artificial intelligence for inbound marketers. If you're looking for the audio recording of this talk, you can go to willtheslidesbeavailable.com and you can get the audio and the slides together. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping. To set the stage for what we're talking about today, we took a look at the CMO survey. If you're not familiar, the CMO survey comes out twice a year in February and August. So the next version should be coming out in about a month or so. When I took a look at the top uses of AI in marketing by economic sector, what I saw for AI was content personalization, predictive analytics, targeting decisions, programmatic advertising, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that as marketers, we face on a daily basis. These are problems that we're trying to solve. And so AI is a really good opportunity for solutions for some of these challenges. When we took a look last year, we saw that companies' use of marketing analytics was reaching an all-time high of 43.5%, which sounds great. The way that they positioned it is that it's an all-time high, which is, so the thing that you need to keep in mind is that it's still less than 50% of companies using analytics to make decisions. Now, fast forward 6 months to August, and that 43.5% went down to 39.3%. And again, this is companies using data to make decisions. So at the beginning of last year, 56.5% were doing things the hard way. And now 60.1% are really doing things the hard way. We tend to see the trend of it goes up at the beginning of the year and back down at the end of the year. And, we haven't really put our finger onto why that is, but regardless, we know it's not great. So what we're talking about today is how artificial intelligence can start to solve some of that problem of using data to make decisions. When I was first introduced to artificial intelligence, I very much felt like I was hearing exactly what Gary Busey is trying to explain here. So when you don't know, you know. When you don't know, but you don't know it. When you don't know what you don't know, so you really don't know you don't know, which means you really know if it is authentic. Now, interestingly, when I translated this into French using Google Translate, it was still just as nonsensical. The point being that there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about artificial intelligence going around these days. And I really want to help break it down into simple, actionable ways that you can use artificial intelligence today. So if we start at the top of what is artificial intelligence, I can tell you what it's not. Artificial intelligence is not magic and it's not unicorns. A lot of times we'll see people talk about their techno wizardry or the magic black box. Artificial intelligence isn't any of that. And also, artificial intelligence is not what Hollywood would have you believe. It's not some self aware robot that is suddenly going to take over humanity. Artificial intelligence at its core is math. So, at the largest category, it's statistics and probability. And then it's algorithms. And machine learning is based on statistics and probability and algorithms. And deep learning, which we're not going to get into today, but it is a part of our artificial intelligence, is based on statistics and probability, algorithms, and machine learning. So all of these things nested together make up artificial intelligence. But really at the core, it's math, it's equations, it's numbers. So within artificial intelligence and marketing, there are 5 use cases that we like to talk about that we feel really get to the heart of some of the problems that marketers are trying to solve today. So this is an unfocused, unclear, untapped, unprepared, and unknown. The 5 use cases of artificial intelligence. To look at it a different way, you can think about artificial intelligence in terms of your content marketing. So an AI-driven content marketing program would be comprised of these 5 use cases. So if we start with unfocused, then we're really thinking about what's the baseline that we need to get to. We need to understand what our customers are doing, where they're coming from, what's working. So you're putting all of this work into your marketing efforts, and you may not know which channels, which platforms, what's working. We ran into this recently with one of our customers who was running multiple campaigns on multiple channels, emails, URLs, tracking. and they're spending all of this money, and they really had no sense of what was working for them, what was bringing customers to their site to take some kind of an action. Now, the CMOs who responded to the CMO survey started to put a stake in the ground to say, we're going to prioritize SEO and other paid digital media, which is great if that's what your customer journey is comprised of. If that's where your customers are coming from, then you should be optimizing those things. However, that may not be what your customer experience looks like. So, as a quick review, the customer experience is comprised of the buyer's journey and the owner's journey. Most people look at the customer journey as the first four phases. So, awareness, consideration, evaluation, and purchase. If you want to go deeper into it, then you can go into the ownership, loyalty, and evangelism. But you really need to be aware of the first four steps. In order to understand what's happening within your customer experience, you need to do what's called attribution modeling. You can get attribution modeling right out of the box. If you're using Google Analytics, then there's about 6 or 7 different attribution models, or ways to look at your data that can help you start to understand, here's what my customers are doing when they're first finding out about us, and what happens when they actually make a purchase or they convert. So within Google Analytics, you need to have a goal set up, something that says, I filled out a form, or I took a specific action that the company cares about. The limitation of these attribution models out of the box is that their sense of the customer journey is very linear. It's awareness to consideration to evaluation to purchase, and that's it. There's no stepping backwards in a step, there's no skipping steps. And unfortunately, that's just not how we as humans behave. So, the attribution model that we like to use is based off of what's called Markov chain modeling. So, a Markov chain model, essentially, in a nutshell, allows for the customer journey to not be linear. So if you have someone who starts off with awareness and then goes to consideration and then evaluation, but they forget about you for a little while, then they come back with that awareness, and then they skip to purchase, and then they, don't repurchase something, but then they re-engage with you again at another time. A Markov chain model allows for that human behavior to happen, and it takes it into account when it's putting together your customer journey. So this is a customer journey for Trust Insights. And what we can see is that social media is where people find out about us. So that's the all the way on the left, the awareness. In the middle, we start to see we have referral traffic. So referral traffic from articles that we've written, referral traffic from other websites. That's where people are saying, hey, I know about these people. I want to learn more about the services that they offer. And then what we see all the way on the right is what's helping people to convert, what channels. And we see primarily that's email. What we do with this analysis is that we can then make sure that the content that we're sharing on each of those channels and platforms aligns with what the customer journey is telling us. So because people are finding out about us on social media, we're not necessarily going to say, hey, buy this thing right now, because they don't know who we are. We would instead be sharing our content around, this is who we are, this is what we do, and then other content that helps people understand why we're a company that they should be working with. When we get to the end of the funnel with the email, that's where we have the opportunity to say, do you want to buy this thing? We have this thing for sale. Tell your friends, whatever the messaging is that we want to use. But we wouldn't be using those emails to reintroduce ourselves, because people already know. And so we use this customer journey analysis to help figure out the right messaging on the right channels so that people are getting the correct information in the right places. So once you know which channels are working for you and where customers are coming from, you then probably want to know, once they get on your website, what are they doing to find out more about you, and what content on your website is helping push people along that path to conversion. So this is the unclear use case. In Google Analytics, you can see which pages people visit the most. So if you go to behavior, site content, and all pages, you see the total number of page views, you see the average time on page, bounce rate, exit, which is all really good, helpful information. But what this is not telling you is, it's not telling you which of these pages help someone convert. You may not have some form or download on all of these pages, but there are going to be pages that push people along that path. So using that same Markov chain modeling, you can then figure out not out externally what channels, but the content within your own website of what is helping people cross that finish line of a goal completion and a conversion. So, what we can see for our own site, for Trust Insights, is that you would expect to see pages such as the newsletter sign up or the contact form. Those are pages that you can directly convert from, that you can fill out a form. But there are other pages within this analysis that tell us, okay, this is the kind of content that is sticking with people, that helps them make the decision that they want to work with us or reach out to us. And a lot of that is our original research. So with that information, we can do more content like that, sharing that content on social media, or boosting those posts to make sure that more people are seeing it. The other thing that we can do with this analysis is that we can see at the bottom the pages that are not necessarily converting. So we have some decisions to make there. Do we need to rewrite that content? Do we need to SEO optimize that content? Do we need to archive those pages off our website because they're not helping anything? So you can use this analysis in a couple of different ways for the content on your own website. Another thing that you can do with the top pages that are converting is, on your website, you could include a section of "you might also enjoy." So relevant content that helps people stay engaged, because you know that these are the pages on your website that are helping people to convert. So you know your baseline of where people are coming from. You know the content on your website that are helping people to convert, but what other content aren't you creating? And so this is the untapped use case. How many people here are using some kind of a social media monitoring tool? Okay, a good amount of people, and that's to be expected. Social media monitoring tools are really, really good tools to find out what conversations look like, what people are talking about. We used a social media monitoring tool to figure out what people were talking about on International Women's Day. We wanted to know, as a women owned business, was there a place for us in the conversation? So, we're strong proponents of, don't just talk to talk, but make sure that what you're saying has value. And so we actually pulled all of the information from our social media monitoring tool and used a technique called vectorization to start to understand not only the frequency, but also the importance of the terms. And what we were able to see on International Women's Day is that there were about 1.6 million posts that mentioned International Women's Day, or roughly the equivalent of about 9,000 novels. That's just in one day. That is a lot of information to pour through. So using this artificial intelligence algorithm of vectorization, we can distill down this information very quickly to see, is there a place for us in the conversation, or just in general, what are people talking about? If you wanted to use an analysis like this to plan ahead for the next year, knowing that a certain event or hashtag is going to be something that's of relevance to you, you can look at the historical data to see what were people talking about at the time. So what kind of content should we be thinking about moving forward? Another use case of this is, we were working with a client who was recruiting for truck drivers. So the really big trucks where they're hauling big equipment, industrial equipment, um, basically anything that requires a very specialized license beyond your regular vehicle. And so what we did was, we were able to scrape the content from a popular job posting site. We used Indeed, and to see what this particular client was posting about in their job post. Because the challenge that they were running into was, they didn't feel like they were getting enough qualified applicants. They didn't feel like they were getting the right people applying for their jobs, and they couldn't figure out where they were misaligned. So we first took a look at what they were posting about. So they were talking about things like CDL driver, certain types of licenses. And what we actually found when we took a look at their call center records. So what we did was, we took all of the audio from their call center, from the recorded calls, people calling up asking questions. We ran it through an AI based transcription service, pulled out the text, and then used that same vectorization algorithm to figure out, what are people talking about? What are they asking about? And this is where we saw the misalignment. So people who were applying actually wanted to know about, when am I going to get paid? How much will I get paid per mile? Is there a signing bonus? When will I be home? What does the schedule look like? So the misalignment was the people who were applying already knew that they had to have a certain kind of license. That's a standard requirement. They wanted to know more about the details that directly impacted them as people. And so this client was able to start to revise the job postings that they were putting out there to include some of this information to attract more people to apply, because it was right there for them up front to say, this is what I expect of you, and this is what you can expect of me. So we were able to use that information to help them start to get the right kinds of people applying for the job. Another use case we worked with was we have a client who they create a lot of community based content. So they're a faith-based organization, and they were struggling to understand if they were reaching people in the right ways, because they wanted to open up more virtual community centers. They wanted to get more people engaging with the content. And so we actually started to scrape some forums, so Reddit forums, sub forums on specific topics around communication, around relationships, and around questions of faith. And what we saw pretty quickly using the same vectorization algorithm was that the questions that people had about relationships, about, you know, human struggles and connecting with people were not the topics and content that the client was posting about. And so they were able to start to reconcile some of their content and bring in those questions and answer those questions, making people feel more comfortable engaging with this particular organization. And one of the things that this client has done recently is they've started opening up virtual campuses because they are getting more aligned with what people are actually having questions about, and seeing this company as a resource for answers to those questions. So you have your unfocused, your unclear, and untapped. You know what channels people are coming from, you know what content is converting, you know what other additional content that you want to be talking about and creating for your audience. So now you can move on to the unprepared use case. So you can be creating content all the time, but are you getting the timing right? So this brings us to time series analysis. This is one of my favorite tools in marketing, and I feel like it's an underutilized tool. So a time series analysis or a predictive forecast is essentially taking historical data, historical numeric data that is time based, and projecting it forward to see what those trends are. We use an algorithm called an ARIMA model, or an S-ARIMA model for seasonality, factoring in different seasons of the year, different trends. And what it essentially does is, if you think about, if you've ever used a map on your phone, it will start to give you, it will take you this long to get from this destination to this destination. And as you're driving along, those times may start to change in real time to say there's a 20-minute delay because of a breakdown, or there's no traffic, so it's actually going to go a little bit faster. A time series analysis using your data essentially works in the same way, where it's trying to help you understand the timing of when things are likely to happen. So the three applications that I like to use the most are for SEO and content creation, social media posting, and advertising spend. The reason I like these three together is you can create one predictive analysis and you can use it a bunch of different ways. So it's really scalable, it's really efficient. When we run a predictive forecast, if we don't have our own data to use, such as Google Analytics data, SEO data, trends data, we like to rely on Google Trends data. So if you haven't used Google Trends is a really useful, underutilized tool that's totally free. And what you can do is you can start to see some of the search trends for certain keywords in certain parts of the country, in different locations all over the world. You can break it down to France, you can break it down to US. This is a snapshot of one of the calendars, one of the predictive calendars that we use at Trust Insights. This is our calendar from last year. And what we did was we did our keyword research to figure out, what terms do we care about? What terms do we want to be known for at Trust Insights? And so you can see terms like Google Data Studio, what is data science, data marketing course, et cetera. And then using 5 years, you can use as much or as little as you want, but we recommend at least a year's worth of data. But we tend to use 5 years worth of Google Trends data, run it through this ARIMA model, and project it forward to figure out, when are people going to be searching for specific terms. This then helps us plan out our content calendar of when we need to be creating content, but also if we have existing content on our website to make sure that it is SEO optimized, that we have our keywords in there, that the links, if they're included in the content, are still working and that they're most up to date, and that any data points have been updated as well. So what we saw starting in September was that people really started to care about Google Data Studio. So what this told us, this gave us an opportunity to plan ahead over the summer of last year. Let's make sure that we have a lot of content around what is Google Data Studio? Why should I use Google Data Studio? How do I use Google Data Studio? When should I not use Google Data Studio? And this came in the form of webinars, podcasts, blog posts, social media posts, you name it. We made sure that we answered all of those questions within our content. So we were able to plan ahead to make sure that we had all of that content prepared before people started to care about it, so that when those dates hit, it was there ready and waiting. So you can see also, according to this calendar, people didn't care as much about email marketing strategy, which is further down on the list. So we weren't going to spend our time necessarily creating that content or fixing up those pages if that's not what people were searching for. So you can do your SEO optimization with this. You can create new content. But then using that exact same calendar, you can figure out the timing of when to post on social media. Social media is forever evolving. And one of the things that we as marketers know is that if you are posting organically or without any money behind it on social media, the algorithms are constantly changing and they're not showing your content as often if there's no money behind it. So Facebook is a really good example of this, where they're really turning their platform into what we call pay to play, where if you're not putting money behind your post, people are likely not going to see it, or not as many people will see it. So if you are organically posting across your social channels, you want to know when you should be posting certain pieces of content so that you have the highest likelihood of people searching for it and looking for it. And again, if you use the example of Google Data Studio and email marketing strategy, in September, we want to make sure that we are frequently posting all of our content around Google Data Studio, and maybe laying back a little bit on the email marketing strategy, as that's not as important to people at that time. It will become important again, but just not during this time period. So if we have a limited amount of opportunity for people to see our content organically, we want to make sure that it's the right content. And then the third application is advertising spend. So again, using the exact same calendar, using the exact same analysis, you can figure out when I should be putting money behind certain things. So, using once again the Google Data Studio example, if we're running Google AdWords, we know that September through the end of the year is when we want to put more money behind the Google Data Studio keyword and then the Google Data Studio ads. And then we want to make sure that if we're on social media, we're boosting our Google Data Studio posts, because that's what people care about at that time. We were working with a client when we were working at a PR agency, and we were working with a client who was spending upwards of $1 million every quarter trying to break into a new market in the weight loss industry. Now, the weight loss industry is already pretty saturated. It's already really big, and it follows a lot of trends. The trends are constantly changing. So what we were doing was we were giving them this analysis once a month to say, if you're going to be spending this much money on advertising, we would recommend following what this calendar is dictating, to say, these keywords matter, these keywords don't matter during this time period. Well, unfortunately, they decided not to use the calendar that we were giving them. And lo and behold, their results were kind of crappy. They didn't get the results they were hoping for because they weren't timing things correctly, because it's such a competitive market, the weight loss industry, that they weren't bidding on the right keywords at the right time. They weren't sharing the right content at the right time, and they just weren't reaching the audience that they were hoping to reach. So if you can, if there's nothing else that you can start with, I would start with a predictive calendar, because you can use it a bunch of different ways to create content, figure out timing of posting and advertising spend. So I want to show you a really quick case study of when we used a predictive forecast, just like the one we showed you on one of our website assets. So it's a publishing site, B2B content. And when we first started, we took the initial data and we saw that users were going up 18% year over year, which is great. But what we wanted to see was if we're timing the content correctly and creating content that people care about, could we do better than that? And well, we did. So what we saw resulted in a 285% increase in conversion and a 248% increase in revenue. And this was all just using that simple predictive forecast of keywords to say, when should I be creating the right kind of content? So a predictive calendar is a measurable thing because you can start to see, I did the right thing at the right time, therefore, this is my direct result. Another application of a predictive forecast is in your email marketing. So what we wanted to know for this audience, for this group here, was when in the next few quarters would people be reading their email the most or not at all? So using Google Trends, again, we put the location as France, and then the keywords that we put in to search for, the terms were when people were looking for how to set up their out of office message. We understand when people set up their out of office, they are probably going on vacation. So you wouldn't otherwise be searching for it just out of boredom or out of curiosity, but it's a purposeful search. It's a search intent. Out of office, how to set up my out of office. And so we wanted to provide this group with that information so that you could plan your email marketing over the next few quarters. So if you want to get your camera ready to take a picture, because I do have the forecast broken down for you in very simple dates. So please feel free to take a picture of it and share it. I just ask that you give us the attribution at Trust Insights and at Katie Robbert. Okay. So this is what it looks like when you want to send email quarter over quarter, the best weeks and the worst weeks. So if you're looking at the best weeks to send email each quarter, you're looking at the week of February 15th, which is coming up soon, April 15th, the week of July 26th, and the week of December 20th. Those are going to be the best weeks according to Google Trends search data that you should be sending your email marketing. The worst weeks when people aren't going to be checking their email when they're out of office are January 15th, which just passed, so don't worry about it, May 30th, September 30th, and November 22nd. So this would be our recommendation if you don't have any other guidelines for your email marketing. I would strongly recommend that you use this guideline. Now, if you have your own historical email marketing data, then you can run that through a predictive forecast, through an ARIMA model, and get an even more accurate and detailed analysis for your particular customer base. So that's predictive forecasting. I feel like there's a lot of really good use cases for predictive just on its own, but it really does work well within the full content marketing strategy. So the last thing, now that you've created the content, now you know when the content should be created, how do you disseminate it? How do you get the content out there and utilize people who have a bigger reach, AKA influencers, to start to get your content to reach out even further? Well, unfortunately, I have some bad news for you. On social media, you may or may not know, but the numbers are not great. So this is our 2019 influencer marketing by the numbers. I believe we have a more updated version, but the numbers didn't get better. They actually got a bit worse. And so across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which are the social media platforms that are most frequently used for influencer marketing, the numbers are not great. You can see Facebook has a maximum engagement rate of 0.161%. Twitter has 0.019%, and Instagram slightly higher at 2.25%. Not great numbers. What we're actually seeing is that Instagram engagement rates are continuing to go down. This is partially because of the misuse of influencers and partially because of the algorithm itself. So when we were talking a little bit earlier about the social media algorithms, if you're not paying to have people see your content, they probably aren't seeing it. And having an influencer does not necessarily change that. So what can you do about that? How can you use influencers in a smarter way? How can you use artificial intelligence to find the right influencers? And so this is an example of what we call a network map. A network map is essentially these different colored clusters of people grouped together by topic and relevance. So the algorithm we use for this is the ion sector centrality, which is, it doesn't matter if I'm saying it correctly or not. The point is, it's an algorithm that helps you understand the relevance. So typically when people think about influencer marketing, they're just thinking about the loudest or the most reach, the number of followers. But a better way to think about influencer marketing is who's being talked about. So if you use this conference, for example, and I believe you'll be seeing a network graph from Trust Insights on this conference. If everybody in this session posted something to Twitter and tagged me in it, then when we generated this map, you would see that my name, me as an influencer, was someone who was most talked about. And then people would then say, okay, I want to engage with this person, or I want this person to help promote my content because people are talking about them the most at a conference and they're talking about the right things, the right topics. Now, that's just one example. You don't necessarily have to use it for an event. We like to because it helps us figure out who's going to be at the event, who is the most influential at an event. Are people using their clout in the right way? And there's a lot of different ways to think about, do I want to meet up with these people in person? Do I want to just ask them to retweet some of my content? Should I tag them in something that's relevant to them? So there's a few different ways to think about it, but it's a smarter way to approach influencer marketing rather than just relying on who's the loudest, because they may not have the right audience. They may not have the right topics. They just happen to have a lot of people. And then it falls into the void of all the noise. So this is what that same graph looks like, just broken out into a spreadsheet where you can see the names of the people with the highest relevance score, where they're located, the description of who they are, the number of followers. And you can start to break it down that way to see, let me pick and choose who I want to reach out to if I have a limited budget or I have very specific needs for my influencer marketing program. There's three different classes of influencers, and unfortunately, marketers rely all too much on the broadcaster, which is the one on the right. So the other two that I just want to note for a quick second are equally as important, if not more important, as influencer marketing changes over 2020. So the first kind is the explorer. It's the cool finder. They're the person who might not post a lot, but when they do post, people sit up and listen because they tend to have something of real value to say. The lead time is a little bit more because these influencers are harder to find. But once you do find them, you can really grow them and have them be a good partner with you. The next kind of an influencer is what we call the advocate. They are the idea champions. This might be someone like an Ann Handley who they have a really good reach, but they're not so popular that they're willing to talk about just anything. So, they're willing to help promote other people. They're promoting other people's content, their books. They have their own newsletter. So they don't take as long to find as the explorer, but they are still a little bit more difficult to find and come across. And then lastly is the broadcaster. This might be someone like a Gary Vaynerchuk, who is really well known in the marketing industry, has a really big reach, has a lot of followers, and they tend to be the loudest. They post a lot. So they're a lot easier to find, but the downside is that these folks tend to be a bit more expensive, and you really need to make sure that you're getting exactly what you need out of that relationship. So just something to think about as you're evaluating an influencer marketing program moving into the next year. So those are the 5 use cases of an AI-driven content marketing program. You have your unfocused, your unclear, untapped, unprepared, and unknown. Or another way to look at it is you start with your digital customer journey. You move on to your most valuable pages. You then figure out the topic modeling of what topics should we additionally be speaking about. You use your predictive analytics to figure out the timing, and then you do your influencer mapping to figure out who can we have help disseminate our information. All of those things address the ways that a CMO has said top uses of AI in marketing. So content personalization, predictive analytics, target decisions, programmatic advertising, improving marketing, et cetera, et cetera. Those 5 use cases address almost all of the ways that AI will be used in marketing over the next couple of years. Now, we should probably take a minute to talk about what AI cannot do. AI is not a human. AI is programmed by a human. So AI cannot express empathy. It cannot share in any sort of a life experience. It cannot experience loss or grief or the birth of a child. Most importantly, AI cannot make decisions on data that it does not have. I think that's probably one of the most misunderstood factors of artificial intelligence. If you have not given it the data, if you have not programmed in the types of decisions that you want it to make, AI is not going to start going rogue and making random decisions and, taking action that you haven't already programmed it to do. Remember, AI at the end of the day, the foundation is math. So if you think back to when you were in school and you were looking at things like the Pythagorean theorem or geometry equations, they were just that. They were just equations. And that is what AI is built on, is mathematical equations. So AI cannot at this time have empathy, make past judgment, have life experiences, or even form relationships. So the next step is, do you build or buy artificial intelligence for your organization? Which is a really great question. Um, each one comes with its own set of challenges. If you build it yourself, it means that you need to have the skill set in-house and the time to do it. Or if you buy it, it means you have to have the money to purchase. And a lot of these software systems are still really expensive. So these are things for you to just consider as you're thinking, how do I start to incorporate artificial intelligence into my organization? Now, looking at the same CMO survey, if you're wondering if you're falling behind, the good news is that you're not. So it's still going to take a while for companies to adopt artificial intelligence, or even to have artificial intelligence appropriately built into a lot of the marketing software that's out there. There are a lot of companies that say we do artificial intelligence, or artificial intelligence is built in, but it's a buzzword. It's a shiny object, and it's not necessarily built in. So having an understanding of the applications of artificial intelligence in your marketing can help you start to ask the questions of, does this software do artificial intelligence? And you can see that AI is starting to make slow inroads into the marketing toolkits. But again, it's sort of like not at a pace that you need to be super concerned about. Now, that said, you should be thinking about, how can I introduce artificial intelligence into my organization? What would that look like? So there is a stepwise process for how to plan for artificial intelligence in your organization. And unsurprisingly, it starts with your data foundation. So if you don't have data, don't try to introduce artificial intelligence. Next, you need to be able to analyze your data. So you have the data, it's collected consistently, but then somebody needs to be analyzing it on a regular basis to understand what happened. And then once you're analyzing your data on a consistent basis, start to make decisions with it. Do you have insights? Can you do additional market research? Can you ask your customers what happened? Why did you make this decision? And then you can start to factor in some process automation. So building dashboards that might run themselves and auto update, or starting with smaller robotic process automation projects that really start to automate some of those bits and pieces. And then the next is the data science. So this is where you start to bring in a data scientist, someone who can explore the unknowns by building statistical and math capabilities, someone who has the skill sets of coding and engineering. And then that person can start to build out more advanced process automation with supervised and unsupervised learning, which is machine learning. So this might be when they introduce a system like an IBM, for example. And then once you have all of those pieces together, then you can start to think about your organization as a whole as AI powered. So you would then roll it out to all of the different teams, all of the different disciplines, to start to use these steps to be truly AI focused. Now, this is a very ambitious, idealistic view of what an organization should look like. It's something that we at Trust Insights are striving to do, and we're still in the process of getting there. We have some places where we feel really confident, and some places where we know we need more work. So it's not something that happens overnight. If you are wondering, how far along in this process am I to bring artificial intelligence into my organization? you need to have the first 4 steps nailed down. So you need to have data that is being collected consistently and that is clean and able to analyze. You need to be analyzing that data. You need to be having insights and making decisions from that data. And you need to start with smaller automation processes. And then you can start to think, okay, now I'm ready to bring artificial intelligence into my organization. And if you're concerned, again, that you're falling behind, the good news, bad news is that you're not. So 63.6% of companies do not have the data to make decisions. 36.4% state that they do, that they have decent enough data to demonstrate the impact of marketing spending. And this goes back to that initial graph where less than 50%, 39.3% of companies were using data to make decisions. There are ways to introduce artificial intelligence in order to start making decisions with your data. And we just went over 5 really good use cases of artificial intelligence for your organization. So what's next? Well, if you're concerned that AI is going to take your job, it's not. AI takes tasks, not jobs. And so when we talked about the things that artificial intelligence can't do, those are still uniquely human. And so making judgment calls, forming relationships, customer relationships. If you can look ahead at your calendar 3 months from now, and you know exactly what's going to happen on that day because everything in your day is so repetitive, there may be an opportunity for some automation and some artificial intelligence to start to take away some of that repetitiveness. It's probably a lot of reporting and a lot of the same tasks repeated over and over again. Start to think about artificial intelligence for those tasks so that you can then focus on more valuable things, such as those insights and actions and planning and relationship building. And so, where do you get started? How can you do that? Well, attending this conference is a really great start. There are a lot of really smart speakers at this conference that can help you get started. So, you want to promote a constant learning mindset. You want to look into certification. So, I've talked a lot about Google Analytics. Google Analytics and the Google Marketing Platform have a lot of really good free certifications that you can do to help you learn more about analyzing your data. HubSpot, which is obviously a partner of Inbound, has a lot of really great certifications that you might want to look into. And if you want to get that deeper dive, then take a look at the free certifications and classes that you can get through IBM. I would recommend that you attend webinars and workshops. Again, this event is a really great place to start. And then to be a little bit self-promotional, sign up for blogs and newsletters. The Trust Insights newsletter gets published on a weekly basis, and we try to not only showcase our own content, but content from around the industry that really helps people understand where we're going with the intersection of marketing and data science and artificial intelligence. So I'd recommend you get started with something, and certifications and attending conferences like this is a really great place to start. But do something, because like my friend Gary Busey says, nothing changes like changes because nothing changes but the changes. Got it? I appreciate your time today. If you're looking for the audio recording and the slide download, you can go to willtheslidesbeavailable.com. Once again, I'm Katie Robbert. Thank you for your time today. You can follow me across the various social media platforms. And I appreciate you having me here at this event.
Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.